Welcome to Ad Spend Secrets. My name's Luke Smith, and today we're talking about why your ads might not be the problem. And what I mean by that is there's two different sides of the equation when you're talking about generating leads or generating sales with advertising. You've got the traffic side and you've got the website side in most cases. So we can look at the ads as much as we like, and yes, they've got to be congruent to whatever's happening on the landing page or the website, but half or 50% of that equation is going to be what's happening once this traffic leaves the ad platform, whether it be Google or Facebook. So we're going to dive deep into that in just a second. So one of the most common reasons why e-commerce brands might have a low return on ad spend, or local service-based businesses, for example, might have really high lead costs and might not be getting the number of contacts that they need to generate the appointments they need, is because the website experience or the landing page experience is quite poor. So if you look at the example of e-commerce, when you're sending people from, say, meta ads, whether it be Facebook or Instagram, and they've seen maybe a catalog ad, they've seen the exact product, then they go click through to your website. Maybe they're taken to the direct product page, and there's just a few different features of the product. There's maybe one image, maybe it's low resolution, it's a little bit grainy, and there's no trust signals. They don't have shipping information. There might not be the MasterCard and Visa symbols, all those kind of trust icons. If that's all missing, then they might bounce. And you can look at the ad and think, well, this return on ad spend, the ROAS in platform is really poor. But what could be happening is the ad's doing really well. We're sending people to a website with a poor user experience. So what we're going to talk about is a couple of different ways that you can increase your return on ad spend without even touching the ads. Some of the things that we find help most with our e-commerce brands is firstly looking at, you can look at Google Analytics and you can look at the landing page report, and you can see time on site, and you can see conversion rate, and you can see exactly which pages are performing the best. And if you know exactly what URLs and what pages you're sending people to from your ads, you can look those up in GA4. You can even filter for sources to say, just look at these pages for traffic from Facebook ads, and you can see how they're each individually performing. And if you're sending a lot of ad traffic to one of these URLs and it's performing not well or really poorly, you might want to look at that URL to see why that might be. Now, one thing that we've been using a lot recently is called Microsoft Clarity. And if you've heard of any kind of tool like Hotjar or heat mapping tools in general, it's very much the same, but it's free, which is a big plus, obviously. And there's no limits. So you can get as many recordings and as many heat maps as you like. But it's really, really insightful to pop that code on your website. It'll start recording users' activity. You can see desktop versus mobile, and you can see heat maps. You can see scroll depth. All these different things can help you understand how people are flowing through your website. So when we're looking at whether it might be an ad problem or a website problem, if we're looking at e-commerce and we're maybe thinking about a Facebook ad experience, to rule out an ad problem, first of all, what we would do is we would look at the click-through rate. We'd look at how engaged people are looking at that ad and clicking through that ad from Facebook. If it's got a click-through rate of 1% or above, it's generally quite good, and we're not too concerned. Now, if it's got a CPC, that can vary a little bit, but typically you want it $2 or under. In general, we've got some brands, even in the same space, it's interesting, some accountants might have a CPC of $1.50 and others might have a CPC of 80 cents. Similar product range, similar industry, even in some cases, we've seen this many times. But under $2 should be fairly okay. If your CTR is 0.2%, your click-through rate is 0.2%, the ad's just simply not engaging enough. And you're not effectively, you'll likely see a higher CPC at that 0.2. Cost per click is what I'm referring to by CPC. And in this example, you're just not moving people from Facebook in the most efficient way, or in a way that's going to probably be profitable for you. Without even looking at your numbers, it's just probably too much to spend on traffic. So you want that CTR to be higher. You want to make sure that your ads are engaging enough to move them from the platform, because that's the whole reason we're running ads, right? We're trying to get them from the ad platforms to your website. Once they hit your website, you can actually see a lot of this information still in Facebook to see if it's a problem or not. So you can look at, what we would look at first is what Facebook would call a content view event and add to cart event. Now, if you're using Shopify and you've got the native Facebook and Shopify integration set up, you're using the Facebook channel in Shopify, it's going to feed these in automatically. So if you add a column in your Facebook reporting and you're looking at content views and add to carts, you can also tick the box for cost per, and you can look at cost per content view, cost per add to cart. This is going to give you an idea of, after they click, whether or not people are viewing product, which is your content view, or adding to cart. And typically in my mind and in our agency, we've got a bit of a ballpark where if it's a content view of $5 or less, we're pretty happy. And if it's an add to cart of $15 or less, again, it's not too bad, knowing that a few of those add to carts might result in purchases. Obviously, the lower the better, but anything above $15 is probably going to start to be a bit of a red flag. Again, it's going to depend on price point. If you've got a $20 product, you're going to have probably many add to carts. And if you've got a $500 product, you might not get as many people adding to cart because they've seen the price before. And it might sort of steer them in not the wrong direction, but let's think about it kind of direction. So on Facebook, you can see these kind of metrics that lead up to a purchase. So if you're seeing loads of clicks and you're not seeing any purchases, they're the things that we'd look at on Facebook to see, okay, well, what are these costs looking like? And if they're really high, we dig into the website. That's when you can open up Shopify. You can look at just the dashboard. The analytics dashboard on Shopify is great. You'll see the conversion rate, and you'll see just below that, you'll see the add to cart rate, and you should also be able to see, checkouts initiated and a few other numbers there. So add to cart rate, the one before purchase, obviously, we want to see that about 6% or above. If your website, if your Shopify dashboard showing something, 2, 3, 4%, it's probably a little bit low, and if you've got a low ROAS and you're wondering why my ads aren't working, again, it could be something website related. And typically, if you've got an add to cart rate low like that, you might have a low conversion rate as well. You're just not getting people flowing through the way that you probably need to start generating that kind of money from your ads, that kind of return. So that's kind of how we would steer towards it being a website problem. Now let's think about what we can do on the website. The main issue that we see actually, usually early level startup brands, is the header image on the website as you land on a desktop is blurry, and nothing says I'm new, maybe I set this website up myself, more than a blurry header. So I'd absolutely fix that straight away. You need something that's pretty clear, as clear and high res as possible, just to give that trust. That's the first thing that someone sees. You want to give a good first impression, and you want a little blurb, a little headline in that header, ideally, that really speaks to your audience and says in a very, very concise way what your product is and how it's beneficial in a very concise way. You could have a headline or a subheadline, and then a CTA. You want a call to action button on that above the fold. And one thing to consider, if you've discovered that maybe your ad metrics are pretty good, but your website might not be converting, is mobile. So spend most of your time on mobile. View and review things on mobile, because 80% plus of your traffic coming to your website is likely coming through a mobile device. So that's where I would spend your time. If you're looking at Microsoft Clarity data, if you've added that code to your website, give it a few weeks and have a look at mobile. First, look at the heat maps, look at some recordings, and look at GA4, as I said, Google Analytics 4. Look at those landing page reports, time on site, how long are people spending on your website, and where are they converting, where are they dropping off? Are they hitting the website and viewing product? If that's flowing through okay, then you look at, okay, well, what are they doing once they hit the product page? Are they viewing product and not adding to cart? If that's the case, then your attention should be spent and your time should be spent on the product page. If they're getting through the product page, they're adding to cart and they're not checking out, maybe there's something on the checkout page that's a bit off. Maybe something's misaligned on mobile. Maybe there's a pop-up actually at that point where you don't want a pop-up. That happens a little bit, to make sure you're sort of blocking any pop-ups that could be distracting when someone's right at that checkout point. Yeah, little things like that will help you figure out where you should be focusing your time. On the product page is probably one that we find most beneficial to spend a bit of time on if we know that we're getting product views but less add to carts. And often the fix there is, maybe the client or the brand is speaking too much about the features of the product and not necessarily about the benefits. So one easy way to tie the feature into the benefit is just to, have the feature there and then just have so that. And when you read it back to yourself, and in an example, say for raincoats, if you've got heat-sealed lining, so that your kids don't get too cold in the winter or the rain, so that your kids don't get shivering cold when they're out playing, So that's more visual too. It sort of gets the person that's hit the website, hit the product page, thinking about your product. It gets them thinking about it more from their own perspective, how they would use it. And it can be much more compelling than just writing something like, heat sealed linings, because it's not tied to any kind of solution for them. And that's really what people are buying for, is the benefit. They're not really buying for the heat sealed lining. They're buying, a raincoat in this example, because their kids love it playing outside and it's getting a bit cold, and then they're going to be muddy. So let's try and speak to that on the product page. That's typically the quickest win. So we've gone through a few different things on how to identify if it's an ad problem or a website problem, and how to discover exactly where that drop-off might be on the website if you're feeling like people aren't flowing through the way that they should be. So if you need any help with identifying if it's an ad problem or if it might be a website problem on your website, just visit simplyconverting.com/call. You'll fill in a short form, you'll book in a call, and we'll jump on and we can have a chat and see if there's any way we can help.